Clinical manifestations of the disease of the corticospinal level. So corticospinal pathways may be involved in diverse disease process. So including vascular disease, neoplasm, degeneration, trauma and others. So when are these corticospinal pathways involved? Corticospinal pathways are involved in diverse disease process. So what are the different diverse disease process? Vascular disease, neoplasm, degeneration, trauma and others. So the essential manifestations of corticospinal tract lesion consists of loss of skilled voluntary movements or impairment of integration of movements, along with an overactivity of lower segmental centers due to disinhibition. So what are the essential manifestations of a corticospinal tract lesion? Loss of skilled voluntary movements or impairment of integration of movements, loss of skilled voluntary movements or impairment of integration of movements, along with an overactivity of lower segmental centers due to disinhibition. So the lower segmental centers are overactive due to disinhibition. So the loss of voluntary movement is accompanied by increased tone in the involved muscles. So voluntary movement is lost, at the same time the tone is increased in the involved muscles. So the paresis from a lesion involving the pyramidal tract tends to involve entire extremities, or so it involves the entire extremities or certain muscle groups. So the paresis from a lesion involving the pyramidal tract, it involves the entire extremities or certain muscle groups. So pyramidal lesions disrupt movements. Any muscle that participates in the movement will be weakened regardless of its specific lower motor neuron innervation. So pyramidal lesions disrupt movement. So any muscle that participates in the movement will be weakened regardless of its specific lower motor neuron innervation. So any muscle okay, that participates in the movement will be weakened. But in contrast, lower motor neuron lesions involve muscles innervated by specific structures such as nerve root or peripheral nerve. For instance, corticospinal tract lesion causes weakness of it causes weakness of external rotation of the shoulder. So this movement is carried out by both the infraspinatus and teres minor muscles. Okay, so external rotation of the shoulder, it is done by infraspinatus and teres minor muscles. So corticospinal tract lesions, it involves both the infraspinatus and teres minor muscles. So the teres minor is innervated by the axillary nerve. So which nerve innervates the teres minor? The teres minor is innervated by the axillary nerve, the infraspinatus by the suprascapular nerve. Infraspinatus by suprascapular nerve, teres minor by axillary nerve. So both are weakened despite their different segmental innervations. So both they have this different segmental innervations, but in corticospinal tract lesions both are weakened. So pyramidal tract lesions do not cause the sort of severe early focal muscle atrophy seen in LMN lesions, but there may be some mild but late atrophy of the involved part due to disuse. So pyramidal tract lesions, they do not cause the early focal muscle atrophy. So the early focal muscle atrophy, it will be seen in lower motor neuron lesions, but there may be some mild late atrophy of the involved part due to disuse. So with lesions that are congenital or occur early in life, the involved limbs may fail to grow normally, resulting in hemiatrophy to various degrees in adulthood. So with lesions that are congenital or which are occurring early in life, the involved limbs may fail to grow normally. So this results in hemiatrophy to varying degrees. So such hemiatrophy may be difficult to detect. Comparing the size of the thumbnails is a traditional technique for detecting subtle hemiatrophy. So when atrophy does occur with corticospinal tract, it usually affects the small muscles of the hand. There are no fasciculations. Okay, supposing atrophy is occurring with corticospinal tract. So atrophy occurs which muscles? It usually affects the small muscles of the hand. There are no fasciculations. So there are no fasciculations in the small muscles of the hand. Deep tendon reflexes rather than being lost, as is the usual case with neurogenic atrophy due to lower motor neuron lesion, or increased. So with upper motor neuron lesion, deep tendon reflexes are increased and clonus may be elicited. The superficial reflexes are diminished or absent. So what happens to superficial reflex in corticospinal tract lesion? The superficial reflexes are diminished or absent. Various pathological reflexes such as the Babinski sign, often termed pyramidal reflexes or upper motor neuron signs, often appear, and normal associated movements may be lost and abnormal associated movements may be present. Trophic changes are uncommon, but occasionally there is edema, desquamation, pigmentary changes, or glossy skin. Trophic changes are uncommon, but what is happening is there is edema, desquamation, pigmentary changes, or glossy skin. There is edema, desquamation, pigmentary changes, or glossy skin. So a pyramidal tract lesion, it causes weakness in a characteristic distribution. So facial pyramidal tract lesion, weakness in a characteristic distribution. So facial weakness, so this will be limited to the lower face, although occasionally eyelid closure may be slightly weak. So though it is limited to the lower face, but occasionally eyelid closure may be slightly weak. So voluntary facial movements are affected more than emotional ones. So what happens here is voluntary facial movements are affected more than emotional ones. So and movement in response to emotional stimuli may be normal. So this is called as dissociated facial palsy. So what is happening? Voluntary facial movements are affected more than emotional ones, and movement in response to emotional stimuli may be normal. So this is called as dissociated facial palsy. There is slight, if any, detectable involvement of the muscles innervated by the spinal accessory nerve. There is slight, if any, detectable involvement of the if any detectable involvement of the muscles innervated by the spinal accessory nerve. So there may be slight weakness of the affected side of the tongue. Slight weakness will be there of the affected side of the tongue, but the throat and jaw muscle function normally. Deglutition, articulation, movements of the trunk and other functions with bilateral supranuclear innervation are little affected. So this deglutition, articulation, movements of the trunk and other functions with bilateral supranuclear innervation are little affected. Voluntary skilled learned actions are most impaired. So which are impaired most? Voluntary skilled learned actions are most impaired, and there is loss of the ability to carry out fine independent fractionated movements, especially with the distal portion of the extremities. So voluntary skilled learned actions are most impaired, and there is loss of the ability to carry out fine independent fractionated movements, especially with the distal portions of the extremity. So gross movements and those that are habitual or have little voluntary control are relatively spared. So the extremity weakness, no, so this reflects the preferential corticospinal tract innervation of certain muscle groups. So it has got the pyramidal or corticospinal distribution. So when weakness is mild, no, it may be detectable only in the corticospinal distribution. Distal muscles, especially hand muscles, receive more pyramidal innervation than proximal muscles. So whenever there is a case of corticospinal tract involvement, what happens is distal muscles, especially the hand muscles, no, they receive more pyramidal innervation than proximal muscles, and distal muscles are particularly affected. So in the upper extremity, so weakness, no, it is preferentially involves the weakness because wrist, no, wrist, finger and elbow extensors, supinators and external rotators and abductors of the shoulder. So what happens in upper extremity? Weakness involves the wrist. It involves the finger and elbow extensors, supinators and external rotators and abductors of the shoulder. There is relative sparing of the flexor, pronator and internal rotation muscles. Supinators are involved, wrist, finger and elbow extensors, external rotators and abductors of the shoulder, but sparing of the flexor, pronator and internal rotation muscle. So in the lower extremity, no, weakness is most marked in the foot and toe dorsiflexors. Foot and weakness is more marked in the foot and toe dorsiflexors, knee flexors, flexion of the knee, and flexors and internal rotators of the hip. Flexors and internal rotators of the hip, relative sparing of the extensors, external rotators and plantar flexors. So in the hand, wrist, finger and elbow extensor, supinator and external rotator and abductors of the shoulder. In the lower extremity, no, weakness is most marked in the foot and toe dorsiflexor, knee flexors and internal rotators of the hip. So when weakness is strong, when weakness is severe, the strong non-corticospinal tract innervated muscles overcome the weak muscles, producing the characteristic posture of a spastic hemiplegia. So because the non-corticospinal tract innervated muscles, no, they overcome the weak muscles. So this will produce the characteristic posture of a spastic hemiplegia. So because the hand, see what is the characteristic posture of 25.6. Okay. So this is the characteristic posture of a patient with hemiplegia. So what is happening? The arm is held in adduction with slight internal rotation at the shoulder, flexion and pronation at the elbow, and flexion of the wrist and fingers. So because extensors are weak, no, wrist extensor, so hand flexion of the wrist and fingers will occur, and supination is weak, no, that is why flexion and pronation occurs, and it will be in adducted position with slight internal rotation, and additional flexion may still be carried out. There is marked weakness of extension, okay, marked weakness of extension. There is loss of isolated movements of the wrist and fingers, okay, isolated movement of the wrist and fingers, but movements at the elbow and shoulder are less affected. And when you see the lower extremity muscles, no, there will be weakness of the flexion at the hip and knee, okay. Flexion weakness at the hip and knee will be there. So that is why, no, the hip is extended, adducted and often externally rotated, and the knee is also extended. So there is weakness of the dorsiflexors and everters of the foot, often with a pes equinovarus deformity causing plantar flexion and inversion of the foot and toes. So marked weakness of extension will be there in upper limbs, and in the lower extremity there is weakness of flexion at the hip and knee. The hip is extended, adducted and often externally rotated, and knee is extended. There is weakness of the dorsiflexors and everters of the foot, often with a pes equinovarus deformity causing plantar flexion and inversion of the foot and toes. The spasticity or increase in tone, when we take the tone, it is more marked in the flexor and pronator muscles of the upper limb. So this is opposite of weakness, okay, and tone is more marked in the extensors of the lower, more apparent with an attempt to extend or supinate the muscles of the upper extremity or flex those of the lower. So tone most marked in the flexor and pronator muscles of upper limb, and extensors of the lower more apparent with an attempt to extend or supinate the muscles of the upper extremity or flex those of the lower. So passive motion may be carried out with little difficulty if done through a small range of movement, but resistance increases if an attempt is made to move the extremities through a greater range. So with little difficulty, passive motion may be carried out through a small range of movement, but resistance will increase if an attempt is made to move the extremities through a greater range. Slow passive movement may be carried out with relative ease, but on rapid movement, there is a blocking or catching, often with a waxing followed by a sudden waning of tone at the extremities of the range of motion, clasp knife phenomenon. So slow passive movements may be carried out with relative ease, but on rapid movement there is a blocking or catching, often with a waxing followed by a sudden waning of the tone at the extremities of the range of motion. So this is called as clasp knife phenomenon. So the paralysis that follows a vascular lesion of the internal capsule. Supposing if there is a vascular lesion in the internal capsule, effects of corticospinal tract lesion. So soon after the event typically reveals flaccid paralysis and areflexia on the opposite side of the body. So immediately following the lesion, it will be flaccid and areflexia. So this is called as cerebral shock. But soon it will be followed by spasticity and hyperreflexia. So when the corticospinal pathways are affected by a spinal cord lesion of sudden onset, especially if bilateral, there also may be a period of flaccidity, and supposing if it occurs with the cortical lesion, it is called as cerebral shock. But if it occurs with the spinal cord lesion of sudden onset bilateral, then it will be a spinal shock. So which sooner or later, in most instances, it gives rise to the corticospinal syndrome. So during the neural shock phase, the plantar responses may be mute and superficial reflexes are absent, and the pyramidal or upper motor neuron syndrome gradually emerges over hours to weeks with spasticity, hyperactive tendon reflexes, extensor plantar response and continued absence of superficial reflexes. So with spinal cord lesion, this is in chapter 25.